So when we went online, we found a few different definitions, and we found that our definitions varied somewhat by how the site was motivated, whether they were anti-GMO or pro-GMO. And to get a little bit better idea of the wide variation in definitions of GMOs and exactly how those interact with people's motivations, we've asked a bunch of experts what their opinion is of how you can define a GMO.
Well, GMO is one of the most misunderstood concepts.
GMO means genetically modified organism. It's really a set of technologies.
It's where some advanced techniques are being used for introgressing the gene.
A plant or an animal, an organism that has had one or more genes inserted into it that weren't there before.
A GMO is a plant or animal that has been altered using recombinant DNA technology, essentially. So it's had genes added or maybe genes taken away, but using recombinant DNA technology that you could argue wouldn't happen naturally.
A GMO is direct modification of DNA. When we do conventional plant breeding in any organism, we modify DNA, often dramatically, but we do it indirectly by picking different kinds of organisms that have different properties, making hybrids that might not exist in nature, and they have large changes in their DNA, their expression of genes. Sometimes genes are lost and gained, but that's kind of an indirect product. With biotechnology, with GMOs, we directly go in, we modify the DNA that's there, or we add DNA from another place.
I have no idea what a GMO is. It's a genetically modified organism is what it means, but is a Chihuahua and a Great Dane, are they genetically modified organisms? I would argue they are relative to their ancient ancestor, the wolf. And so unfortunately, GMO is this amorphous term that doesn't mean anything. So I think what it gets used quite frequently for is to discuss the technique or breeding method called genetic engineering.
I think the more scientifically accurate term is to call it a genetically engineered crop.
Genetic modification through recombinant DNA technology is very different than any other forms of genetic modification which have been employed before.
When you take DNA from one organism and infuse it into the genome of another organism, we call that transgenic organism that results, and that is called genetically modified organism. That's GMO.